Hey folks, this is Kelani. Even though Blizzard is still keeping us in the waiting room of the patch 8.2 PTR, they have been a little busy recently with interviews to get the hype train rolling for the next patch of BFA and to give us a little glimpse of what's coming our way and also when we might see some of it. There's a lot to break down here from a variety of interviews, so let's hop right in. The first thing I want to address is the when, because if you've been watching any of my recent videos, you know I'm already frothing at the mouth for this patch to hit the public test rounds. It promises to be a very large patch indeed, with sweeping changes to various systems to address a few of the biggest issues that have been plaguing Battle for Azeroth since launch. And it seems like the dev team agrees about that fact. Patch 8.2 is going to be one of the largest patches we've seen, and I hope it truly is because the game needs an extra bit of oomph right now. From one of the interviews, we know that the PTR will be going up very, very soon. Which still doesn't really tell us a great deal, but I hope that very soon is a lot sooner than the typical Blizzard soon, because they're going to end up cutting testing close at this rate. But Ian also said we would be getting a huge info dump right before the PTR goes live, so they're probably planning a few more interviews, maybe some blog posts to explain some of the larger changes in 8.2, maybe a video or two on YouTube, and then the PTR itself will also serve as a huge info dump when the data miners get their hands on all of the new build information, so expect something big very soon, like probably sometime this week soon. That's what I'm hoping for at any rate. We have a little bit of a time frame for additional information coming our way. Apparently we'll see a lot of communication from the dev team in the coming weeks in April, through into the start of May, so we'll probably see the large info dump and then some additional blog posts or something similar, which go through the content coming in 8.2 over the next few weeks. That's a lot to look forward to for sure. We'll finally get some solid info on all the bits and pieces that are coming with this major update. Now, if you've forgotten or you just haven't been keeping up to date with the info so far, we'll be getting two new zones in patch 8.2, Nazjatar and Mechagon. Apparently Mechagon is going to be just a bit bigger than the Timeless Isle from Mists of Pandaria, and Nazjatar is going to be quite a bit bigger than Mechagon. We'll be spending time in both locations, progressing with new features and updates to most of the BFA systems so far. We'll also see another mega dungeon in Mechagon. If you missed Karazhan in Legion, it's basically just a very long dungeon with lots of bosses. I think the Mechagon dungeon is supposed to have 8 bosses, and it's only going to be available on Mythic difficulty to start with. Eventually they will probably break it down into 2 sections and open it up for normal and heroic random queues, but for the first few weeks a mega dungeon will probably take quite a good chunk of time to get through, so that's super exciting, and hopefully they hide away a few secrets in there as well like they did with Karazhan. I think Karazhan worked out really well, so I'm really looking forward to another mega dungeon. But 8.2 will also set up the story for the next raid tier, where we'll break into Queen Azshara's palace and eventually confront a very long-standing villain in Warcraft lore. The raid itself will probably open quite a bit later than the actual patch, but we'll have story quests throughout the new zones which explain our purpose in these new zones and also give us something to work towards. As a quick note, it seems like the Horde and the Alliance will still be at each other's throats throughout this entire process. No one is going to forget the Battle of Desert lore anytime soon, so I guess peace is more or less off the table for a little bit longer as we work our way towards the Void expansion. Maybe the Void and the All Gods are making sure we don't coalesce again and can't work together, but the faction conflict will still play a part as we move forward. I expect both zones to have some Horde vs Alliance activities to take part in, because according to the devs in these interviews, there's no reason to look for peace right now. That's kind of interesting. Personally, I would have thought the greater threat of the Naga would push us back together, but the Alliance did just kill the king of our brand spanking new race. We can't just let that slide now, can we? We also learned that Azshara is going to play a key role going forward, which doesn't really feel like news, seeing as she's Azshara after all. Of course she has a role to play in the patch, which is all about her, but they also added that there's going to be some unexpected twists in the story. Right, and I kind of feel like telling us there's going to be an unexpected twist makes it more of an expected twist, does it not? Hopefully it's not something everyone sees coming from a mile away and we actually are surprised, at least a teeny weeny bit, but I'm looking forward to watching the next few chapters unfold in Battle for Azeroth. Now, one of the most important parts of the patch 8.2 update is the overhaul to the Heart of Azeroth system. We have a few additional details that we didn't have before, and though nothing will be able to take the place of getting onto the PTR and actually playing around with it, hey ho, here we go, we'll have to work with what we have. The Heart of Azeroth will have its own progression path in 8.2, very similar to how artifacts worked in Legion. We kind of figured this would be the case, but now we have it in writing. We also know that the Heart will have both passive and active abilities, including spells that we can keybind and actually use. Hooray for the return of artifact abilities. Now the cool part is that Ian not only said we would have active abilities, but apparently these new abilities will immediately change our combat rotation in a meaningful way. That's going to be pretty awesome if true. This single change to our artifact could turn class design on its head. And it's the main reason why I just can't wait to see 8.2 on the PTR. This could fix so many issues in one fell swoop. I really hope they've done a good job with it. But that's not to say that artifact armor will get left behind. No sir, we'll still be collecting Azerite armor in the same 3 slots, and we'll even see new traits on new pieces of gear. I assume that will include stuff from Mechagon and the new raid in Nazjatar, so expect to see some cool Naga or Mecha Gnome related traits creep into some of the Azerite armor. But even though we'll have new traits and new Azerite armor to hunt for, the way it's going to work will be slightly different. We won't ever have to work to unlock our traits again. Any Azerite traits on new gear will just automatically be available for you to play around with and pick the ones you want. No more regrinding to get the same rings or traits. That's going to be a thing of the past. So right now in the Battle of Desert Law and Crucible of Storms raids, this will be the last time we have to grind artifact power to unlock Azerite traits. After 8.2, artifact power will probably still be used, but it's going to be used to unlock stuff in the Heart of Azeroth new progression path, so we get to keep all of the good parts of Azerite armor without most of the negative parts. They also touched on some of their reasoning behind their initial Azerite setup going into battle for Azeroth. While the artifact weapons in Legion provided a lot of choice, customization and progression early on in Legion, after you unlocked all of your basic traits, we only really had one place to put future AP, Concordance. That became a very linear system with minor boosts in power, so that system was very front-loaded, very cool to begin with, not so great after the first few months. They wanted to avoid that same situation, so Azerite traits were supposed to provide you with choice, again and again and again, all throughout the expansion. I think they just didn't take into account the fact that you're making the same choices over and over again, and you're actually losing existing traits that you already chose to provide you with some additional choices. Obviously it didn't pan out too well. If you're curious about why it took so long for these changes to be made to the current artifact system, apparently they've been working on the Heart of Azeroth stuff coming in 8.2 since the very early days of BFA's launch. They immediately realized they had a problem, but they just didn't have enough time to fix it. They tried to patch things as best they could for the Tides of Vengeance update, where they added an extra ring and more traits to help balance things out, as well as the Azerite Armor Vendor to help increase availability of gear, but anything else was outside of that patch's scope. Now they've had more time to refine their big idea, and there's a major patch to deploy their system overhaul. We can finally see what they've been working on all this time. And I know a few of you are probably asking the same question. Well, if they knew something was wrong, why wasn't this fixed back in beta when they were getting a lot of negative feedback about the Azerite system? The answer to that is they didn't have enough time, or rather they didn't leave themselves with enough time to do anything about it if things turned out bad. We didn't see Azerite traits in the Battle for Azeroth beta until fairly close to the end, and the ones that we did have access to for the longer periods of time were just the leveling stuff. A lot of players, myself included, figured the leveling stuff would be fairly boring and bland by design, and the dungeon and raid traits would kick things up a notch. But by the time we actually had access to the higher tiers of traits, the release date was right around the corner. Thankfully, the dev team realized this was a significant issue and will make sure that major features of expansions, such as Azerite armor and traits, will be available for testing in alpha and beta phases much earlier to give them more testing time. Let's hope they can stick to that going forward, but I guess the first test of faith would be the patch 8.2 PTR. With the Heart of Azeroth being one of the major players there, I would expect it to be one of the first systems fleshed out in the testing cycle. I guess we'll have to wait and see whether they can get this right the second time. Another pretty huge takeaway from these interviews is the dev team's philosophy when it comes to permanent content versus temporary content in expansions. Adding something to the game which will affect everything in the future is very different from something that they add in for a specific expansion. If they expect a system to stick around, something like Mythic plus Dungeons, then they have to give that system enough room to be able to grow in future expansions. But with something like Legion artifacts, which were designed and built from the ground up with full intention of throwing them away at the end of the expansion, that meant that they could kind of go crazy because they wouldn't have to worry about how it's going to affect anything in the future. That's why we see so much temporary content being added to the game, so the dev team doesn't have to worry about future implications and complications. But according to this interview, they may have gone too far in that direction, and they want to come back a little bit and add in some stuff which is purely for player satisfaction. Here's an interesting quote. "We need to be more willing than we have been in the last couple of years and expansions to make permanent additions to the game and accept that, yes, there will be some untidiness down the road, but it will be worth it because it's exciting for players." That's really awesome to read, and I can't wait to see these words come to life in-game, either towards the end of this expansion or as we head into the next Warcraft adventure. Being able to say that, yes, we want to do something for the good of the game right now, even if it means we have to dial things back or clean things up in a few expansions' time again, it's a sign that things should get better, because one of the main problems in Battle for Azeroth is that we just didn't gain anything. We lost a bunch of power and a whole lot of customization going from Legion to Battle for Azeroth, and for fear of having to remove things again later on down the line, they decided to just not give us anything instead. I reckon most of us would probably rather get something cool and fun and exciting for a few expansions and have it replaced by something else, rather than not get anything at all. So with that being said, and the quote that we have there, I can't wait to see what they come up with in the future. Now that's most of the meat from these interviews. The only other thing of note was that apparently we'll be seeing more island expeditions and more war fronts in patches after 8.2. The islands don't really surprise me. That seems to be doing a bit better as a feature and a system, especially with the updates that they've been given, and we're actually getting more islands in 8.2, but a new warfront does kind of surprise me. I guess I figured they were just going to leave warfronts with the heroic mode in 8.2, but the dev team must think it's still worth the development time to throw another one into the mix. I wonder which zone will see an overhaul next. With how the battles have been going, I wouldn't be surprised to see a Baron's Warfront, which maybe leads up to another Siege of Orgrimmar to deal with Sylvanas. I guess it all depends on where the story with Sylvanas goes, right? But that's it for this video. What do you think about the new Heart of Azeroth feature from what we've heard so far? What's the feature or system update that you're most excited about in patch 8.2? Leave all your thoughts in the comments section below. A big thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon. You can see their names floating by on screen. If you want to join these lovely guys and gals, you can find a link in the description below. Remember to leave a like just below the video before you leave, and if you want to see more, make sure to subscribe. But apart from that, thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always I will see you next time.